with that, I want to go ahead and thank you very much for your participation. I have a summary slide here. I'm going to jump into some questions that folks have. Now, there's a question here around the methods that we use to characterize the data. How does the Drobo know when I'm writing a file or writing to an SQL database? And what I'd say is we do it at a level lower than the file system. We are an iSCSI target, so we are a disk drive to your system where you mount the storage and use it via an iSCSI initiator. As the blocks come to us, we understand what the operation is, if it's a write operation or read operation, and the size of that operation. So for example, if you were writing a 4K block to a drive, in our case, you're writing it to our Drobo storage device, we understand that to be a small write, which based on its size is transactional in nature. And thus, we would choose to route that and place it intelligently and directly onto the SSDs. Another example, if you opened up a backup job and you were starting to back up a very, very large amount of information, we would see that as a write as well, but it would be very large. And that size would give us the indication that it can and should go directly to the bulk tier, where you would not benefit from the quick response of getting the data written out to the disk. So those two examples hopefully help clear up a little bit on how we go ahead and make those decisions. We're doing it at a block level underneath the file system internal to the way we virtualize the storage, and it's the nature of the data itself, its size and characteristics, which would give us the decision on how to intelligently place it on the drive. So thanks for that question. Question here, are any SSDs supported, or do you need to buy them specifically from Drobo? Well, to make it easy for you, we do have a part number that allows you to buy the configuration with the SSD straight away. We also, on our price list, offer a SSD pack that you can buy from Drobo through your favorite reseller or from online resellers that would give you the SSDs you can add to an existing Drobo B1200i. Those are OCZ Talos SSDs. They are a 3.5-inch form factor natively, so there's no need to use an adapter to convert from 2.5-inch to 3.5-inch. Those are straight away 3.5-inch drives and work great with our carrierless design in and out of a Drobo. So we'd go ahead and recommend those particular drives, but we will have in our release notes and on our website on the release date a set of qualified drives that you can use in a Drobo B1200i to get that tiering. Because as I mentioned before, one of the things that makes Drobo a Drobo is the choice that you have in mixing and matching drives. So you'll still be able to do that with a Drobo. Just the 2.5-inch SSDs that are more common in terms of form factor will need a adapter in order to adapt to the 3.5-inch slot in a Drobo. Now, there's a question about the frequency and or schedule by which data is either promoted or migrated off the transactional tier to the bulk tier. So in the case of data coming into the transactional tier immediately, that might be small write type IOs or previously promoted data that came up from the bulk tier. We would continue to monitor all of that storage, and if it continues to maintain a high heat index, a high access pattern for that data, it would remain in the transactional tier because it's being actively accessed and it still meets those same criteria. If it no longer is receiving a lot of reads, in that case, we would know that we could migrate that data to the bulk tier because its acceleration benefit was already provided and you may no longer need it there. It's how we can continue to leverage a very small amount of SSD storage, yet provide acceleration to all your applications perpetually because we're managing the acceleration at that level. So it does run perpetually. There is a periodic copying of data. And when it comes to seeing how read acceleration might happen, Drobo does need a little bit of time in order to promote data from the bulk tier. So think about it in a matter of minutes, very, very quickly. And it certainly happens much faster than you could possibly do it yourself if you wanted to try and move things around. So great question. As we look here a little bit further, now this is a great question that makes sense to cover here about how Drobo manages hard drive procurement. Now, you can buy a Drobo B1200i with 6 2TB drives. You can buy it with 12 2TB drives. You can also buy it with 9 2 terabytes, and 3 SSDs. So think of those as the 3 base configurations, so to speak. You can buy the 6-drive configuration and add some SSDs from Drobo. You can buy the 6-drive configuration and then add just about any SAS, SATA, and select SSDs that you want that meet certain requirements. We have a drive recommendations document and web page on our website that talks through that area of what the right types of drives that we would select. But one of the things that makes Drobo a Drobo is you do have freedom to purchase drives from wherever you want and add those. It's one of the ways you can get a higher scale Drobo. The base configuration with 2 terabyte drives, you could add 3 terabyte SAS drives to that configuration to get higher capacity, and Drobo allows you to get that capacity with our Beyond RAID technology. Now, how well does the automated tiering work with VMware? And it's a great question because some tiering solutions are very specific to the application or the application environment that they're installed in. In the case of Drobo, we're working at the block level. So as you take iSCSI volumes and you scan for storage adapters and incorporate those iSCSI targets into your VMFS data store, we receive data just like we would if it were from a physical system in the form of read and write operations. So whether it's coming from VMware or coming from Microsoft or coming from a custom built application you have running on Linux, Drobo will provide the same level of tiering to accelerate those applications based on the nature of the data. We have another question here regarding the iSCSI only. Can we have this product as NFS as an example, or is it iSCSI only? And I can confirm that the Drobo B1200i is an iSCSI only system. We give you 3 iSCSI ports that you can configure for different VLANs or different subnets that would give you the ability to do multipathing or MPIO across those for higher availability and throughput. But we do not offer an option to make any of the ports a NFS or CIFS file sharing solution. So it is iSCSI only. Another question is about expanding on the whole idea if you put more than one B1200i together. What does that environment look like? And I mentioned before that you can go to drobo.com/live and get more information on a live demo. We show this in all of our live demos, how to incorporate additional storage into the environment. Drobo is a scale-out architecture. What we mean by that is as you scale more Drobos out, you're adding controllers, you're adding Ethernet ports, and you're scaling out horizontally. And you're doing it with very easy-to-use building blocks. The classic view was a scale-up architecture where you would connect multiple chassis through some proprietary high-speed interconnect and use the same controller to manage all those different chassis, so to speak, or the shelves of storage. And I made mention of a couple of those examples where you needed 2 or 3 doing it that way to match what Drobo can do with just one device. If you do need more than 18 terabytes with the SSDs or more than 24 terabytes with just 2 terabyte drives filling a Drobo, you can add another Drobo to the same environment. Our Drobo dashboard management software sees all Drobos on your network and all Drobos that you specify by IP address, sees them all in one interface. And it's actually faster to get to any Drobo in your environment and provision new storage on your network than it would be using the classic tools of a scale-up architecture. So management-wise, it's actually easier. The only thing you can't do in the way Drobo does it is pool a volume between different Drobo devices. Now, without thin provisioning, the idea that you deployed storage, you want to be able to use it all, you can have some imbalances between your systems, and there is a risk of being able to strand some of your storage without being able to pool it across chassis. In the case of Drobo, we have thin provisioning, so you can actually present and provision much more virtual storage than you actually have from any one chassis using thin provisioning. So you don't have to worry about stranding storage per se. And to a server on the network, whether it's a iSCSI target coming from box number 3 or box number 4, it really is not going to distinguish it at all. It's going to look just the same, and you can get a lot of the same benefits, minus the pooling. But typically when people pooled spindles, it was to drive higher IOPS. And we've already talked about Drobo's strategy is not to pool lots of IOPS through pooling a lot of 15K SAS drives. It's through the deliberate use of a very small number of SSDs to give you the best of both worlds, both capacity and performance. Well, a lot of great questions, so I'll continue to take them here. What's the optimal ratio of the spinning disks to SSDs? And I would say that the optimal ratio is our minimum number of SSDs. So however many hard drives you need in order to have the capacity you're looking for. And then you use a small number of SSDs. 2 if you have just single disk redundancy, or in the default with a B1200i dual disk redundancy, or the equivalent of RAID 6. 3 SSDs there would be all you need to create the transactional tier and provide enough capacity to enable not just the immediate acceleration of data coming to the transactional tier, but also the routine promotion of high temperature, frequently accessed data to the SSDs. So you need not spend more on additional SSDs. The system works just as well with the minimum number of SSDs in the system. And that's how it's been optimized in terms of a ratio. Now, does Drobo offer in the product any deduplication or compression or encryption? And the answer is no. Those aren't features that are built directly into the Drobo, but we do have a lot of customers using those very specific features because they're looking for those to complement a disk-based backup solution. And Drobo has certifications with Symantec, Acronis, Veeam, and others, each of which have options to enable things like compression, deduplication, and encryption. So our solution recommendation would be not to have it run in the storage hardware, but rather have it be a part of your data protection strategy as your backup application writes the data to the disk-based backup target, in this case using Drobo for that particular situation. Question about real-world benchmarks. I'm glad you asked that question. Drobo will be releasing a ESG Lab Validation Report, Enterprise Strategy Group, an independent analysis firm based in Massachusetts. In fact, the most well-known storage and cloud and enterprise computing analysis firm in the United States. We have worked jointly with them on a lab validation report, which will be published by the 25th of April, providing a lot more information on their independent testing and analysis of a Drobo. We can share with you all those same use cases and, in fact, run some very specific workloads that you want to see run on a Drobo without you having to test it at your site. You can go to drobo.com/live, sign up for one of our live sessions, and the engineer who's hosting the session can and will take you through any of the real-world performance benchmarking stuff that you want to see. Will the B800i receive any of the benefits of this new software? And in keeping with Drobo's tradition of evolving our products, you can expect that we'll bring capabilities like support for Microsoft HyperV and other enhancements that have been made in our Drobo B1200i. We'll take those in the future and apply them to the Drobo B800i as well. We don't have a specific time frame or date to set expectations with you, but you can expect that we're going to be working on that, and that's something you can look for from Drobo in the future. So if you have a B800i, not only has its performance gotten a lot better since it was first released in February of 2011, performance has about doubled from a transactional perspective due to software improvements. There will be additional software improvements that we've innovated on from the development of automated data-aware tiering that will benefit the B800i as well. So great question there. Now, we have a question here that talks about the approximate number of IOPS. And as performance benchmarking knows, if you know anything about it, it varies wildly, and it does also have a lot to do with the test setup and how you are testing it for the real world. This ESG Lab Validation Report that we've worked on is focused around a cluster of VMware servers using the ability to do multipathing across multiple ports to the Drobo B1200i, using jumbo frames for a switch environment that can support that, and running workloads like Exchange 500 mailboxes, like OLTP applications for a SQL database that might be there, and file server and backup writer and some other things like that. You can think of a Drobo as providing as good of or better IOPS than SMB solutions that are based on 15K SAS drives, so benchmarking statistics into the thousands with the combination, but using just a small number of SSDs. The 7200 RPM hard drives that we do are based on capacity. They're SAS drives, but capacity oriented, but the blended solution gives you a nice blend of IOPS as if you were to build a system out of all of the highest speed SAS drives. You get the capacity and performance with the Drobo combination. For more information, I'd point you to that ESG Lab Validation Report or to our Drobo live demos where we can take you through any benchmarking that you want to see on the product. All right. How would you deal with a backup application that backs up thousands of small and large files in different streams? Where would it put these? Good question. And the answer is we will place the data depending on what type of write it is. So if it's a 16K write, for an example, it would go to the SSDs. If it is a 64K write, it would go to the hard drive. And depending on how that writing is doing, if it's a 1 meg write, it'll go to the hard drive or the bulk tier immediately. And our hope is, with the way we've designed this particular product, much the same way that Beyond RAID works. With Beyond RAID, you don't need to worry about which data's on which drives and how you've got the RAID groups configured. All the drives make up the RAID group, and we place the data from volumes across all of those disks, and in this case SSDs as well with the tiering. We're going to take care of that and provide you a net benefit outside the black box of double the transactional performance when you put the SSDs in versus just having the hard drives. Great questions, and we really appreciate that diving in to try to understand a little bit more. And I'd also point you to that white paper that we have on our website at info.drobo.com/ebook, which would give you a chapter on how the tiering solution is put together to give you a little bit more information, at least academically, of what the design goals were and how it was implemented on the system. We have a question here about plans for integrating things like dedupe and replication and encryption and compression. The answer is that Drobo will continue on with a strategy of focusing on making the storage management, the stuff that Drobo does exceptionally well, optimizing those and continue to evolve in that area. But it's our strategic belief that with the abundance of processor and memory that exists on servers, that the world is going back to more of a centralized computing architecture that was the norm prior to distributed computing and using PC servers to run IT. The reason why things like compression, encryption, and deduplication and replication were moved out of the central system and out to the end devices was when we went to distributed computing, processors and memory became the choke points. They were the scarcity factor in building out an IT architecture. With the advancements of processor technology and density of processor and memory, it turns out we're virtualizing today because you can't even use 10% of the resources in any one server based on what one server can do. So now servers have multiple VMs in an attempt to try and use more of that abundant resource that's out there in the middle. So we feel that doing it in the middle as a server or host-based application makes more sense because you have the resources there, and inevitably it's going to be easier to manage because it's much more tightly coupled with the applications that are running in that environment. And it's where smaller medium business IT people spend their whole day. They probably don't want to mess around learning storage per se. Their goals and where they are measured is around the applications and application uptime, and they're going to spend most of their time and develop most of their expertise at that level. That's a great level also to do things like replication between systems, whether it's with the VMware Site Recovery Manager type application or Double Take Availability, which is a product that will work on physical and virtual servers. There's a question here if we can comment on HyperV support. So just to confirm, in version 1.1.0 of Drobo's firmware for our B1200i, and it'll be on our B1200i to start only, we will support, starting on the 25th of April, live migration between HyperV hosts and Windows Server 2008 R2 clustering. So if you had traditional physical servers, you want to cluster them and use a shared iSCSI volume for the storage. Drobo had previously not been able to support the clustering or live migration aspect of that. Lots of folks, in fact 40% of the people using B1200i today are using it in a Windows physical server environment, or they're using it with Hyper-V inside of one physical host. We're expanding the support there to have the full live migration the way you can do today in VMware or Citrix Zen Server. So that's a cool new feature there. There's a question here. If you want more transactional tier space, is the best option to replace with higher capacity SSDs or add additional SSDs? And the answer to that question is we've designed and tuned the solution such that you're not going to need a whole lot more transactional tier space in order to accelerate the system. Drobo does a really efficient job of managing that transactional tier in the system so that it's there for acceleration purposes, but it's not intended to be there as a long-term cache for storage the way that it is in a lot of other sort of systems. So it may seem based on the way other systems work, that there would be a benefit to adding more SSDs or higher capacity SSDs to bulk up that transactional tier. But Drobo is designed to be very efficient in that regard. Just having the minimum number of SSDs gives you what you need with no requirement to continue to scale that out in order to enjoy the benefits of the transactional tier. Now, a question about what if we lose all 3 SSDs? What happens? Well, there is data on the SSDs, and we do provide multiple SSDs, 3 SSDs to create the transactional tier for a reason. We want there to be data protection between those multiple SSDs. So it's not anticipated that with dual disk redundancy you would incur a failure where all 3 SSDs would be lost before you're able to replace a failed SSD with a spare. Drobo does offer same-day shipment and next-day delivery of our spare parts. A lot of people will choose to have a spare on hand that they can have there in the case of a failure. But with dual disk redundancy enabled, we are protecting from that case and would recommend that you replace the failed SSDs around the time that it does happen. Drobos use email alerts as a means of providing this sort of information, and those email alerts come from our Drobo dashboard application, which works on any Mac or Windows environment. You can now, with our latest version, manage Drobos in other networks. And the Drobo B1200i has a dedicated management port, which allows you to get access to it, even if it's tucked away in your data center where the iSCSI ports are not connected to anything else but just the backend SAN network. You can still get access to the system through its management interface. We'll keep rolling with the questions here, and this is the next question: what type of support agreements does your company offer? Do we have a 4-hour on-site or a next-day sort of support offering? I can say that there are Drobo reseller partners, and Drobo does sell 100% indirectly through resellers online, as well as large direct marketing resellers and independent value-added resellers across the country and across the world. Some of them can offer you from their portfolio SLAs such as a 4-hour on-site, but the general Drobo support agreement is without any Drobo Care, which is our support package you can buy to augment the product. By default, you would get 1-year hardware warranty and 90 days phone support with the product. And with our Drobo Care, we would upgrade that to 24/7 phone access, as well as next business day delivery, same-day shipment, and next business day delivery in the United States and many countries around the world. If there are customs things that would prevent the same-day shipment from arriving the next day, it could be a little bit longer, but it will always be same-day shipment as long as your RMA request is processed prior to the shipment cutoff. We have a lot of questions here, folks, so I'm going to continue to roll with the questions. Thank you very much for your participation so far, and if you had more questions and want to see this live, you can tune into our live demos at drobo.com/live for more information and to see exactly how the technology works. So we take the next question here. Can we buy the B1200i empty or buy our own drives, including the SSDs? At present time, our minimum configuration is the 6 2-terabyte drives that come in the base configuration, with the freedom to use the additional 6 slots for whatever drives that you may want to mix and match with the system. So you cannot at this time buy it completely empty, but you still have the ability to use freedom on the remaining 6 slots that are in the system. Now, a question here about SATA. Yes, we do have support for SATA drives in the B1200i. You can mix SATA and SAS together if you wanted to optimize that for capacity, as long as your SATA drives were enterprise grade, not those desktop grade ones. We're talking about a system here that in a base configuration is $12,000 for 12 terabytes, or about $1,000 a terabyte. That's still very affordable by primary storage standards, but it's not the type of thing that you'd want to put $99 hard drives into. All right. Now, there's a question that we often get. The product, as I mentioned before, the B1200i has been shipping for more than 6 months now. Do we have plans to add a second controller for redundancy? There is, in the lower right-hand corner of the rear picture of the product, some slots that could be used for expansion. And indeed, our architecture is built so that in the future we could offer a dual controller option. At this time, though, we're not providing specific information on such a model. but it is certainly possible for Drobo to offer a model in the future that will have that. So I'd say stay tuned as we continue to evolve the product and make the product better based on your feedback and your use cases. For now, the Drobo B1200i is a single controller system. You can swap that controller with a field replaceable unit for faster recovery in that fashion, and not yet do we have an announced plan for a second controller. But thanks for the question. It's a great one. The last question, just as a clarifying question, which is a good demonstration that folks are really listening, has to do with filling up the transactional tier. If, for some reason, the way the data is coming to the system, the transactional tier will fill up faster than it can offload to the bulk tier, what's going to happen? And we've done some extensive testing and lab validation of this. It's optimized for those environments that are 250 or fewer users, or applications that aren't going to drive I/O requirements that would be atypical of a small and medium business. So of the things that we're running, the multiple concurrent workloads to a system to simulate what's going on in a small and medium business, we are very much capable of flushing or migrating data from the transactional tier to the bulk tier, so that you would never upset a balance of the ability to promote transactional data or to receive the transactional data to the system. And if you want to learn a little bit more about the behavioral analysis of a Drobo, you can join one of our live demos at drobo.com/live. If you're interested in buying one because this looks like it meets your application requirements, you can contact your favorite reseller. We are available online through direct marketing resellers and through a large network of value-added resellers in the United States and across the world. We'd be happy to help you out there. If you have some technical questions for myself or other technical experts here at Drobo, you can go to any one of our product pages or our solution pages and find that chat window that comes up after 15 seconds. Ask your questions there, or go to drobo.com/live. Join one of our live demos so you can see a little bit more of actually how the product works and get answers to some more detailed questions you might have. On behalf of the other folks at Drobo, I want to recap to say that Drobo's B1200 just got even better with the ability to allow you to do both performance and capacity. It's performance for all your volumes, so it really is the easiest to use. And we now have made the world's easiest to use storage, that is Drobo, even better with the introduction of SSDs. So we fit those projects that you're doing today, the things that are driving more storage capacity, and we would really love to be part of your thought process as you look at how you're going to deploy and solve some of these projects. We do offer both performance and capacity, and if you want some help, there's a lot of ways that we can go ahead and get that to you in an efficient way. So again, my name is Mario Blandini, and I very much appreciate your attention this afternoon, and look forward to not only making sure we give you more information about how you can use Drobo to better fit projects that you're working on in your environment, but also how we can continue to take your feedback and continue to evolve our products and develop and deliver new and innovative capabilities that really meet the need of that smaller organization who has budget constraints but needs the same good stuff that those larger organizations do. Drobo's here working very hard in that regard. Again, thanks for joining today. I appreciate your attendance, and I wish you the best of luck in your storage projects. Thanks again.